Sir Simon decided to start with Mr. Otis. Once he would scare him out of his wits, the rest of the family would be terrified. In front of him, faint candlelight oozed from underneath a door. Stomp, stomp, stomp. He clanked towards it. There was the rattle of a doorknob as the door opened. My dear man, haven't you heard of oil? We really cannot have rusty chains clunking around all night. You'll wake the whole house. The ghost stopped, amazed. In front of him was Mr. Hiram Otis. He was standing in the doorway in his dressing gown, holding out a little bottle. The ghost drew himself up to his full height. Jangling his chains, he gave the most horrible moan. Ah! Mr. Otis pushed the bottle towards Sir Simon. My dear sir, don't get upset. This is Pot's all-purpose oil. I use it for my hair, but it will work just as well for rusty chains. Sir Simon was too shocked even to rattle his bones. Didn't this man know who he was? Here, said Mr. Otis. I'll put the oil onto the table by the candles. Help yourself. Did this American have no respect? Sir Simon swiped the bottle to the ground in a fury. Then, clanking his chains, he turned and fled. But it was not all over. As he rounded the corner, two smoky creatures dressed in white burst out of a doorway, yelling their heads off. A large pillow whistled by, just missing his head. These horrible twins, had they no fear? Here is the picture of the ghost and Mr. Otis. Back in his secret room, Sir Simon fell against the wall and fumed. Red-hot steam hissed from his ears like smoke. Never in his brilliant career had he been so angry. People were usually petrified. What was he doing wrong? Even though he thought over some of his past successes. I'm sorry, I'm reading some words wrong. First, graining through the curtains during a storm. This had made 4 housemates faint in one go. Second, old nosy bones. Madame Tremor had been terrified when she woke to find his skeleton sitting in her armchair reading her diary. stain again. This time it was more purple than red. Very odd, said Mrs. Otis. Very odd indeed. And for the rest of that week, the stain kept coming back. Every day Washington would clean it up, and every morning it would be there again. Even stranger, the color kept changing. On the third morning, it was a dull red. On the fourth morning, it was a sort of orange. Then on the fifth day, it was purple again. And on Saturday, a vivid green. At this point, Virginia began to wonder. Something was falling into place. Up in his room, Sir Simon was also thinking things over. He was getting bored with the bloodstain. He had been wishing for a really good idea, and on Sunday it came. The big one. He grinned to himself. There'd be no more mighty fellows and no more pots all-purpose anything. If the family weren't driven out of their wits and on the boat back to the USA within the week, he would give up hunting forever. He set to work immediately. It was the dead of night. As soon as he was sure they were all sleeping, he flitted down to the big hall. There it was, the magnificent suit of armor worn by Sir Archibald Canterville in the Battle of Biggin's Bulge in 1494. And what a fearsome thing it was. It had a helmet from which his piercing red eyes would gleam like fire, a jagged battle axe, and horrible spiked ball and chain. He chuckled to himself. When the Otis family saw this lot jungling towards them, they would wish they would never been born, let alone set foot in Canterville Chase. He crept up to it ever so carefully, but then he slipped and stumbled. There was an awful creaking noise, then ouch! The whole clanging load fell on top of him. Sir Simon dragged himself out from under half of a ton of heavy steel. His knees were grazed and his foot hurt horribly. Then there they were, Mr. Hiram Otis and his three awful sons in their night clothes. The older boy held up a candle. They were staring at him as if they just hadn't seen a ghost. Then, ping, 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 ping. Those hateful twins were firing pea shooters. Mr. Otis stepped forward. Sir, he cried, hold up your hands and surrender. Surrender. Him, the Canterville ghost. Sir Simon was stunned. This was the final straw. He shrieked with rage and swept like a whirlwind up the stairs, blowing out Washington's candle as he did so. By the time he reached the top of the stairs, his foot was hurting like mad. But he had one last secret weapon, his ghastly cackle. He had always had great success with this. He once turned a baronet's hair from black to white in a single second. He took a deep breath and laughed his most horrible laugh. The old hall rang and rang again with its fearful echo. Sir Simon was beside himself with rage. What will it take to prove to these Otises that they had a real 100% spook under their noses? But then he heard the clatter of footsteps on the stairs. The pinging of pea shooters was getting nearer. He fled. Back in his room, Sir Simon broke down and cried. Those dreadful twins, they couldn't be more than 9. He was 399. No respect at all for their elders, and the rest of them with their candles and pots this and pots that. But the worst thing, the absolute worst thing, was that he hadn't been able to wear the suit of armor. He had been so looking forward to that. He spent the next 3 days recovering, getting up only to put back the stain in the library. But he had already started on his next plan. Tea with the Duke, Chapter 5. Virginia slept peacefully through all that excitement, so she was rather taken aback at breakfast when the tale was told. The twins were full of themselves. Georgie stood up and made slapping noises with an imaginary pea shooter. "I got him," yelled Harry. "I got him right on the nose." "No, you didn't," cried Georgie. "It was me." "Boys, boys," sighed their mother. "Sit down and finish your porridge. The poor chap didn't look well, I must say. You're being too hard on him. After all, he has lived at the Constable Chase a lot longer than we have." "I'm fed up with this," came a voice from the library, "and we're running out of pots. Clean away." It was Washington, down on his knees getting rid of that morning's bloodstain. It was a muddy brown. Somehow Virginia wasn't surprised. "Now, let's stop talking about ghosts," said Mrs. Otis. "Have you forgotten that young Duke of Cheshire and 2 of his friends are coming over this afternoon?" Mrs. Abney had been listening to every word. Virginia wondered if she had heard the goings-on last night, judging by the dark shadow under her eyes. She hadn't slept a wink. The housekeeper cast her fishy glare around the table. "He who meddles with things not proper, mark my words, will come a cropper," she intoned in a low, rasping voice. She was not pleased when both the twins burst into howls of laughter. After lunch, Virginia went out for a trot round the lanes on her pony. It was a lovely sunny day, Simon oozed himself out on the paneling, smiling his most horrible smile. He made his way down the hall, scattering the shadows as he went. The Canterville ghost was back, and how? A few ways off his rusty dagger, and he felt like the king of ghosts, the emperor of spooks. He stopped outside Washington's room. The wind blew his straggly grey hair about his head. His moth-eaten clothes rustled, all moldy and clammy. It was time. He put his claw upon the doorknob. Then something made him turn. Horror of horrors! He fell back, covering his face, daring only to peek out quickly behind his fingers. In the hall in front of him stood a monstrous thing. Its head was bald and shining, its face pale, its mouth twisted in a horrible grin. Around its neck hung a placard where some awful words were written, who knows what, and in its left hand it waved a gleamed sword, a rival ghost. Sir Simon had never seen another ghost before. He was terrified. This ghost had it in for him. He was sure of that. Whatever terrible message was written on that placard, it was meant for the Canterville ghost. He tore down the hall, dropping his dagger in one of Mrs. Otis's boots. Stumbling up the stairs, he whisked through the paneling and landed with a bump on the other side. Then he lay there, stunned, trying to work out what had happened. He had terrorized this house for over 300 years. He had driven strong men and women mad with their fear. Only a few minutes ago, he was the king of ghosts, the emperor of spooks. But now, he was a quivering wreck. He felt deeply ashamed. A little voice inside him was saying, "Sir Simon de Canterville, you are a coward." This horrid thought was enough to bring back some of his old courage. He would seek out his rival and drive him out. Trespasser, squatter. There was only room for one ghost in Canterville Chase. Okay. Let's leave these chapters. The rest for the next reading. I think we might finish the story next time. We have about 1, 2, and 3. We have 3 chapters missing, so I think we might be able to finish it next time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this part. Please let me know. Please let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed, give a like and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss next part. The great finish of the story. I'm sorry for the cliffhanger, but it is more interesting this way. And it creates the suspense. What happens next? So let's leave it now and continue the next time. That's said. Have a nice day, week, night, month, year, whatever. Enjoy